Okay, everyone. Let's see here. Something seemed different with my computer. That could be what it is. Oh, sorry, y'all. Everything dropping on me. I don't like that. Sorry, I'm making an adjustment. All right, y'all. Give me one moment. This just happened. All right, so one of the greatest lessons that I've ever learned, y'all, that I've ever learned about capacity. And at that time, I didn't even have the language for it at that particular time. I didn't learn in the classroom. I didn't learn it. And at that time, business was not nowhere near on my radar. It was pretty much from the hospital. It was when my mom had the medical mayhem, the 90-day medical mayhem, medical mishap, medical mystery, medical journey of her life, of our lives. And it was during that time, even with continuing education in the mental health field, did not teach me this because it's one thing to know something by theory and even in teaching others, but until I've experienced certain things myself, it's like, ooh, okay, I see. And like I said, I did not have the language for it at that particular time. I just knew that I needed something. And I'm going to say I knew that I needed to continue something. Now, one thing I do want to make sure that I point out, I got my notes. in my other notes. If anything, I want you to pretty much get from this is that crisis reveals your capacity that you've already built, that you already have. So, meaning that if you're already have a routine of going to the gym, of exercising, of yoga, meditation, most people have a prayer in their a part of their life is to continue those things. Now, don't get me wrong, sometimes some things may fall off because if I remember correctly, I want to say I was going to the gym in the morning and walking during my lunch break. Now, I wasn't walking during my lunch break initially because my mom was in the hospital. That started because I knew that I needed something for my brain when I was promoted as a supervisor for a very busy, 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 busy program. I knew that. And so I wanted something to help calm my mind down and all of that. And so I want you to think about again, capacity is a lifestyle. It's not just a stop and go. It's like, oh, I'm gonna build my capacity and I'm just good. It's almost like somebody, put in all the work of losing weight, but they don't do anything to it's not just to sustain the weight, but to sustain the gain that they have gotten from losing the weight. You know what I'm saying? Because it gives you more energy. It's like the energy itself doesn't always come specifically from losing the weight, but it comes from the activities and the mindset that you have. And this is what capacity is all about, especially for purpose driven women, because you give so much of yourself, but you got to make sure you give to yourself, through yourself, and for yourself as well. It is not selfish, y'all. It is not at all. It is so, so, so important for you to be able to do that. And so, even though your schedule can really just be all over the place if like have a business, and even if you work in a 9 to 5, it's like that can become really chaotic. It can become uncertain as well. And so and the other thing, y'all, by having a routine already, it really does help you to be emotionally prepared in times of uncertainty. And especially like during that time when my mom was in the hospital. She went in the hospital for cervical fusion surgery. It was anticipated that she'd be in the hospital for 5 days to recover. On day one, they had to resuscitate her, and her oxygen level really went down. And then in the end, she ended up having a trach, a feeding tube, what else? So many different things. Thank God my stepdad was there. And generally, he was there during the day. I was there in the evening, and then with my brother, and I would say somewhere there in between. So she was covered in that way. But because of our relationship with her, we all were impacted, period, and then impacted in different ways. And so, again, at that particular time, I was a month in of being promoted. And I'm going to say that was God's sin in and of itself, because I swear. And it's kind of one of those things. It's like, and we probably have seen it, but it is a reality. Because I have gotten that promotion, that have probably saved my job as well, saved my income, because I said there would be no way that I would have been able, of course, we all got to do what we got to do, but we got to live for ourselves too. Meaning, it's not even about like having bills. We have to have a place to stay. We have to have food. As an adult, we um, support ourselves. And then for some of you who, are partnered and who have children, you support others as well. And so the income can't be stopping completely. I mean, not unless I'm incapacitated myself, in which I wasn't. But in saying that, it saved me because of the fact it allowed me to have the capacity, the mental capacity, emotional capacity, but the financial capacity as well. And sometimes jobs aren't set up. So even though I'm going to say if you are a regular worker, you may not like it, but your job really, your absence really do impact the workflow as compared to a supervisor. So by me being a supervisor, it may have, impacted your management level, but not as a worker. Because if I was out, that highly impact others. It impacts the caseload, it impacts the tension and the productivity and everything like that. And you're like, Sharon, what does all of this has to do with capacity? It has everything to do with capacity because of the fact that sometimes your job allows you the capacity that you need. But even when it comes to your business, and so again, crisis reveals the capacity that you already have. I want you to remember that. So what that means is it doesn't mean like, oh, I'm so strong, I can take on the world, I can do all of these things. No, because half of the time you're probably overloading yourself anyway. And especially if you think, oh, I've got to do it. If I don't do it, no one else will do it, and no one else can do it like me. That may be true to a certain extent, but at the same time, you cannot work yourself into the ground or to work yourself into a breakdown. No, 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 no. This is where capacity can be very, or shall I say, you cultivating your capacity can be very, very helpful in and of itself. And so the next point is your ordinary routines can become a lifelines. Your ordinary routines can become a lifeline. Let's say when it comes to knitting and crocheting, I used to crochet when I was younger. It was so, but I forget what it's called, the hook thing. You all remember that when I was introduced to that? But when it comes to bowling or golfing, now some people say, how in the world they can go and golf and they got all of this going on? Because it helps them with capacity, with cultivating the capacity. Golfing is very similar to going to the gym, very similar to walking. It really helps. It's not that it just helps to get your mind off of something, it distracts you, but it also helps you, again, to build that capacity. And so it can be your morning routine, it can be movement. Like for me, at that particular time of my life, again, remember how earlier I said that sometimes some things can drop off? Because, like, initially, I was going to the gym and walking. But I'm going to say because of the emotional impact, one, of the job of being promoted as a supervisor, and then two, of experiencing what my mom was going through, that I ended up going to the gym, ended up dropping off. But I was determined to continue walking during my lunch break. And that helped my capacity. So, as a purpose driven woman, what routine do you have on a daily basis even sometimes on a weekly basis, that helps you to sustain your capacity. Because again, you can be doing all of those things, and it's not just the fact that you're doing that you did them yesterday or last week, it's what you're doing today to continue and what you're going to do tomorrow. Because that is so important. Because when there's challenges and crisis and chaos, it increases the cortisol. We all know about, the stress hormone. We all know about that. And so, oh, I can't do anything about that. No, you may not be like, of course, I had no control over my mom being in the hospital. I had no control over what she was experiencing. I had no control of the medical issues that she had, but I had control over what I can do in response to that so that I can be supportive of her, even though she wasn't conscious for a period of time. And the other thing is, don't leave people out either. You know what I'm saying? Don't leave people out. Allow others to choose how they want to support you, even though you may need them in a certain way. But what I've learned as a therapist that I see with the clients that I work with is that other people, one, could be going through something, but most people don't have the capacity to support you beyond their own capability. You know how we say in that, like, our parents did the best that they can? That too. You may not like that someone withdraw from you. They're not comfortable. Yeah, generally some people can work through that. And this is why it's important for all of us to cultivate our capacity. It's not just for our calling, but it's for our life because it becomes a lifeline for us. And sometimes there may be, and that's another conversation of that some people is like, oh, okay, you have that mental note of who you can depend on. But then the other thing too is that you just may not know what they're going through. And it's not your business at that time. That's why you focus on you. You focus on you. It's like, oh, if you start saying they just don't have the capacity to support me, that's a different take. That's a different take than, oh, I thought they was my friend. They weren't there when I needed them. Because sometimes, even if it is 6 months later, a year later, 2 years later, sometimes when you discover of what they were going through, like, oh, I had no idea. And then you're not supposed to be honest to a certain extent. And so your practice can help you to carry on, to carry through again without being underground and without breaking down. Now, the other thing I definitely want to make sure that I point out is that capacity doesn't remove challenges, it doesn't remove crisis, it doesn't remove, chaos, but it definitely can help you walk through it. And this is why it's so important to cultivate your capacity, especially as a purpose driven woman. Because again, you give so much, but make sure you give to yourself. And it doesn't mean that you're not going to hurt or things aren't going to be difficult or that you won't grieve or be overwhelmed. But it does mean that you are building a building block. You're building the things that you need so that you're developing the internal and the external resources. Because the external resources could be the connections that you make with others. Because the thing is, you remember how I said before that sometimes those closest to you may not have the emotional capacity to support you, but you may be able to find someone else who does. But get this, it's really important for you to increase those internal resources because you're going to need them more than anybody else. And of how much be able to co-regulate with others, but then sometimes it just may not be. I know this was during another time in my life, another season. It was like after the breakup. And I remember after the breakup, one of my friends, her son was having surgery. And then she hadn't that long. I can't remember which came first. Yeah, I want to say, no, not at that particular time, but I know her son was having surgery. And then another one of my friends, they had a breakup themselves. It's like we had enough, let's say, energy to talk to each other to say, hey, this is what's going on. But neither one of us, because we were going through our own thing, had the capacity to support each other. Are we mad at each other or anything like that? Like, no. Like, we all remember what was going on in each other's life and what they were going through. And so that really does happen, you know? Because along the way is for you to develop the skills and the lifestyle that I'm saying the skills and the lifestyle, but the skills that you need for your lifestyle at that particular time to be supported. So it's other people. So again, this is another reason why we continue to do our own individual work because we never know where somebody else may need a helping hand so that, I can have the capacity to be able to support others. But then again, you may not be able to do that if you're going through your own thing. It doesn't mean that, it's like, oh, it's so godly and it's so all of these things because of the fact that you have helped someone else. But if you are bleeding out yourself, if you're depleted, you're drained, and you're becoming detached, it is so hard for you to be able to do that. And so mentally, be okay with that because of the fact you can make yourself bleed internally more. And when I say that, this meaning internally drain you, depress you, all of those things that can add to going underground or breaking down. And it's a constant thing, y'all. It is a constant thing. And so again, going back to my mom, medical mayhem, that was, oh my gosh, for all of us. Again, it impacted all of us. I want to say it impacted all of us in different ways, but in similar ways as well. And all that we can do is like when it came to my stepdad and my brother, because we were the ones, that was living in the same town at that particular time, it's like we couldn't depend on each other for support. So we had to rely on our external support, in which I relied on my best friends at that particular time. And at that particular time, my best friends did have the capacity to be able to support me because of the fact they didn't have, major things in their life at that particular time. And then my brother, he was able to rely on his support system. And then with my stepdad, he was able to rely on his support system. And so, because again, we all were experiencing the same source of the distress. And so that happens because why do you need to be the strong one? Like, for instance, if someone passed or someone has a medical mayhem, mishap, and things like that, you're going through it. Why do you have to be the strong, sister or the strong, sibling to support others where you're experiencing the same thing? Oh, everybody always come to me, and that can be very admirable, but it's not admirable if you're breaking down because you're extending your hand too much. Because you can only do what you need to do. Because again, we're all personally responsible for cultivating our own capacity. Yes, it is for, we can give and we can be supportive, but you are in pretty much chaos of challenges and crisis yourself. So it is very hard for you to be able to support and help others when you're in chaos yourself. So stop doing it. Definitely stop doing it. And the other thing is, I want to point out pretty much the point that I made earlier. It's like, even though my mom was experiencing all of those things, in that, life doesn't stop. Life continue. Because like I said, I had to continue to work, and it's not that I'm going to say this, and this is the way that I believe in things. It's like, to a certain extent, definitely, of course, advocate for your family. There are times in which, you may need to be there side by side with your loved one to be able to take off work and things like that. But sometimes you may not always need to be there 24 hours, 7 days a week. And so be okay with that and know when you are needed. But at the end of the day, life doesn't stop. I had to support myself. I couldn't be at the hospital worried about my mom. She's getting the care that she needed. Even though she had all of those complications, there's nothing that I can do. I'm not a surgeon. I work in mental health. You know what I'm saying? I'm not a surgeon. I don't know nothing about oxygen. She's getting the help that she needed. So, of course, allow them to do the thing. If there's anything that needed to be advocated, of course, advocate for those things regarding care and the things that can come up. But at the same time, my stepdad, he's more than capable of supporting and advocating for my mom. Believe me, he will, and he did. So I'm saying that, just meaning that you don't always have to be the one to be there. Because especially, I'm learning more about, the eldest daughter, what that means. And sometimes it's what we put on ourselves. Not always. Sometimes it could be what have been put on you. But for some of us, it's what we put on ourselves. And it's good to be able to be helpful and supportive. I'm going to say we all have a gift. And it is nice when each person in the family can use their gift to help strengthen the family. But again, the one thing I know that helped me through that was by working. Working by walking to my lunch break. Even though I stopped the gym, but I continue to walk. So what are some of the things that you do, that even though life can be kind of crazy at times, it can be chaotic, there's so many different things that's going on, but what routine do you have that allows you to have the capacity to deal with the things that you're dealing with? And again, we're just talking about on the personal side, and we haven't even hit for those of you who have a business and all of that. So again, even though walking, it's not going to change my mom, but it sure did help me to get through what my mom was going through, so that I can have the clarity, so I can have the capacity to be able to show up as my true self and to be able to support my mom and then support my stepdad when he needed it. One thing I do want to make sure that I point out, and this is really important, y'all. This is important. This is really, really one thing that I've seen by working with many people. And I say this, I kind of like to say degreed or not, meaning for those of us who have a degree, for people who have a degree, degreed or not, none of us are exempt from the happenings, from, I'm going to say, the cycle of life. None of us are exempt from emotional distress. None of us. It doesn't matter if you degrade. It doesn't matter how much money you make. It doesn't matter where you live. It doesn't matter your position, your role, the prestigious that you may have. None of us are exempt. And I'm going to say this, if you haven't experienced it yet, because I kind of felt like the most emotional roller coaster of my life, I experienced that as an older adult. Really, I experienced more of that older, like, why you wait until now? And so the thing is that what it's like when life happens, I want you to ask yourself this question. And I'm going to read this because I want to make sure you all get this. What have you built that you can draw from when life asks more of you than you expected? I'm going to read that again. What have you built that you can draw from when life asks more of you than expected? And that's one of the things that I have seen, and which is one of the reasons why I do this work. It's still about self-care. Like, what are the things that you're doing to take care of yourself? But it's so that you can have the capacity to sustain life's adversity, challenges, and difficulties and chaos, because all of those things are unexpected. Because one of the things that I talk to my clients about, is in the framework of the nervous system, but it's pretty much for our well-being, is that it is important for us to nurture our nervous system, give ourselves the things that it needs, that it wants, that it desires, but also to recondition the nervous system from the experiences and the trauma that you've experienced from the past. It's the unlearning parts as well, but also to train. And this is where a lot of this work, is stemmed on, is training for the unexpected, is to be prepared. Because as a purpose-driven woman with a calling, it is not just the ideal. It's the things to get your ideal in front of the right people. And that's another conversation. And so with that, it's like the disappointments, even the heartaches that comes along with your calling. It's the challenges, the adversity that you will experience, is to be able to prepare yourself, not just for your message, but what happens in the boardroom, what happens with collaborations, what you learn about yourself, what you learn from other people. So all of that is in the work that you do. So keep that in mind. Because again, gone are the days of this hustling and grinding. Gone are the days of you doing all of this, but you're not taking care of yourself. Because you need the capacity to be able to show up. You need the capacity to show up as your authentic self. You need the capacity to show up whole. And that comes from the rituals, the routine, and the practices that you have now. Along with that, most people know who Dick Van Dyke is. And there's a meme out there that says, let's just say, like in his 20s, and he said, yeah, I'm exercising to prepare me for my 40s. In his 40s, I'm exercising to prepare me for my 60s. And in his 60s, he's exercising to prepare him for his 80s. And now he's 80. At least I believe he is. And because he'd exercised and did different things in his 20s, in his 30s, in his 40s, in his 50s, and 60s, he's able to do, push ups and different things because of that. It's the things he did along the way. So, what are you doing for your mentality, for yourself emotionally and physically? Because again, gone are the days to say that you got a calling and you're doing all of these things for others, but you're not doing anything to keep yourself healthy. And yes, we know that sometimes people can.
Reverend Ike says, what you recognize, you.
Everybody know Reverend Ike. And so, with that, it's like gone are the days that all of this grinding and hustling and bustling, there's work to be done. Sometimes they are long hours, but you're going to get your rest and you're going to recover. You're going to do the things again. You're going to nurture yourself. Stop neglecting yourself, okay? Because you matter too. And so, if anything, I don't want you to wait until a crisis comes, because this is what ends up happening sometimes when someone has high blood pressure and diabetes. Before people get to the stroke, before most people have the heart attack or the stroke or diagnosed with heart disease and even sometimes kidney, not always, but for the most part, those things just don't start from nowhere. There is a build up, and most of the time it is months, years of build up. So how about building something else up? Build yourself up, not just to feel good, but to be good in your body, in your cells, in your muscles. And then there are some areas in my life I'm like, ooh, I got to improve on. I slacked off and didn't even realize I was slacking off. Let me get back up. Let me get back out there. So what about you? Because again, we want you to be prepared for the crisis, for the chaos, for the challenges, and not to be, succumb of them. And we're not talking about the outliers that can end up happening despite of. And so, what are your intentions right now of how you're going to cultivate your capacity for your calling, for your life? Because outside of our calling, life still happens. Some of you have family, and then parents who may need a level of care, who may need to be cared for. And so it's important for you to cultivate your capacity. And cultivating your capacity, like you're listening to this and you're motivated, like, oh yeah. But what happens is when the video goes off, when you stop reading the book, when you stop listening to the podcast or watching the YouTube, what are you doing to cultivate your capacity? Because being motivated is one thing, being inspired, that's one thing, but actually doing the work and to be able to give yourself that permission to be able to rest, because without that, you're decreasing your capacity, which increases the opportunity for high blood pressure, for stroke, for heart disease, and other things as well. So if anything has resonated with you in this conversation that I've had, comment capacity. And especially like Sharon, I need some help. I don't know what, because the other thing I'm going to tell you, being in community really does help. It really does help you with your capacity as well. It really does. And so I will see you all next time for our next live. And let me know in the comments what resonated with you. See you next time.